Hello, all you freedom-loving people. President Trump is confident that the Democrats will make a deal to avoid a government shutdown. ICE in Minnesota can now pick up illegals directly at the jails, and the European Union listed the Iranian Republic Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Okay, let's get into it. Today, President Trump held his first cabinet meeting of 2026. During the meeting that lasted more than an hour, President Trump listened to cabinet officials' presentations, and then he ended the session without taking questions from reporters.
We are going to ask a couple of people to say a few words, and we're not going to go through the whole table because the last time we had a press conference, it lasted for 3 hours, and some people said he closed his eyes. Look, it got pretty boring. In all fairness, I love these people. But there's a lot of people. It was a little bit on the boring side. But I didn't sleep. I just closed them because I wanted to get that out of here. Some of them, I didn't sleep, by the way. I don't sleep much, let me tell you. But, you know, it's funny. Some of them got me in a blink. You know, when you go like, and they took me as at the closed segment of my cycle. And they said he's sleeping. And besides that, Marco, between these two guys, if I was sleeping, they'd be waking me up very fast. They'd be knocking me. Come on, you got to wake up, boss. But no, we've had great meetings. Look, we're the most transparent presidency by far, and I love going around the room. But we're going to pick a few people.
President Trump said that the White House is getting closer to a deal with Senate Democrats to avert a government shutdown.
It was great, and it's going to be, I think we're going to have an amazing and incredible year. Hopefully we won't have a shutdown. We're working on that right now. I think we're getting close. The Democrats, I don't believe, want to see it either. So we'll work in a very bipartisan way. I believe not to have a shutdown. We don't want a shutdown.
Congress is racing toward a January 30th funding deadline, but it remains deeply split on how and whether to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Today, the Senate failed to advance a key spending package after Democrats refused to back it without changes to DHS and immigration enforcement. But then Fox News reported that Senate Republicans held a closed-door meeting to discuss avoiding a government shutdown, and they said that they're optimistic about reaching a deal with Democrats.
So the latest is that we're getting word that Senate Republicans have emerged from a closed-door meeting. And when they emerged from that meeting, they sounded optimistic about a potential deal to address the government funding fight. The deal may involve passing 5 appropriations bills out of the 6th, and then a short-term funding patch for DHS so that the government can stay open while the negotiations over DHS and the way that it does its duties, those talks could continue. So with that,
even though Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was the object of interest during the meeting, Minnesota was mentioned only once. But that was not in connection with the high-profile news stories about recent federal immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pointed to Minnesota, along with California, as part of the administration's push to crack down on Medicare and Medicaid fraud. But Noem did not comment on the matter. Instead, the main discussion about operations happened on the ground in Minneapolis. Today, during a news conference in Minneapolis, Border Czar Tom Homan said that he had made significant progress during his meeting there and that this will allow him to draw down federal agents and to conduct targeted enforcement operations in the city. Homan also said that state and city officials have agreed to honor ICE detainers in their prisons. This means that before releasing an illegal immigrant who is wanted for criminal offenses, the jail must notify ICE so they can take custody of the person when they are released. Homan said, "We are not surrendering our mission at all, we're just doing it smarter." Homan noted that increased cooperation from local officials would allow for a gradual reduction in the number of federal agents.
I will highlight that the Minnesota State Prison System under the Department of Corrections have been honoring ICE detainers. And we appreciate that important collaboration, and we're going to expand upon that. That decision has made Minnesota safer, not only for residents of Minnesota, but the men and women in law enforcement. Not just ICE, all law enforcement. Rather than arresting the same public safety threat, significant public safety threat over and over again, they agree to work with us to identify those people and remove them. I'm also pleased to announce I had a very good meeting with Attorney General Ellison, and he has clarified for me that county jails may notify ICE of the release dates of criminal public safety risks so ICE can take custody of them upon the release from the jail. And let me tell you why that's important. I know people are a lot concerned about the manpower has been sent in law enforcement manpower. Look, I've said this many times before. I've said it for the last several years. Give us access to the illegal alien public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail. It's common sense. It's safer for the community, it's safer for the agent, and it's safer for the alien. Because anything can happen on a street arrest. It just makes common sense.
Homan also said that during his meeting with state and city officials, they all acknowledged that federal immigration laws were passed by Congress and that ICE is a legitimate law enforcement agency charged with enforcing those laws.
In my meetings with folks so far, and most important, the governor and the AG, the Mayor Fry, we didn't agree on everything. I didn't expect to agree on anything. I've heard many people want to know why we're talking to people who they don't consider friends in administration. Bottom line is you can't fix problems if you don't have discussions. I didn't come to Minnesota for photo ops or headlines. You haven't seen me. I came here to seek solutions, and that's what we're going to do. And we've come a long way, and we got some good wins for the people of Minnesota, I think, and for the administration and for the safety and security of this city. One thing we did agree on, though, everybody I talked to agreed on, was that community safety is paramount. One thing we all agreed on was U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement is a legitimate law enforcement agency that has a duty to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and keep this community safe.
Homan also said that he would stay in Minnesota until the problem is gone. Today, the European Union announced that they agreed to place the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, on the EU's list of terrorist organizations. The IRGC was established after Iran's revolution in 1979 in order to protect the new political system. It controls large parts of the economy and the armed forces. The IRGC is also responsible for the ballistic missile and nuclear programs of the Iranian regime. And now this move by the EU signals a shift in their approach toward the Islamic Republic of Iran. Previously, some EU countries pushed to label the IRGC as a terrorist organization, while others hesitated over concerns about the diplomatic ties with the Iranian regime and the safety of Europeans in Iran. But the violent crackdown on protesters has shifted the mood, with France, Italy, and Germany now backing the move to list the IRGC as a terrorist organization. This is because the European leaders now say that the bloodshed can no longer be ignored. And today, the European Union also sanctioned 31 individuals and entities who are linked to the Islamic Republic over human rights violations and its drone program. The United States, Canada, and Australia have already designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization, but the UK has not. A conservative lawmaker welcomed the EU's move, and he urged the Starmer government to stop delaying and to take action against the IRGC. And during the cabinet meeting today, War Secretary Pete Hegseth warned that the Iranian regime should not pursue nuclear capabilities, otherwise we will be prepared to deliver whatever President Trump decides.
Same thing with Iran right now, ensuring that they have all the options to make a deal. They should not pursue nuclear capabilities. So we will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects of the War Department, just like we did this month. No other military in the world could have executed the most sophisticated, powerful raid not just in American history, I would say in world history.
And while tensions continue to build around the nuclear program of the Iranian regime, other countries are now preparing for possible fallout. Today, the head of Russia's nuclear energy agency reported that Moscow is prepared to evacuate its personnel from the Bashir nuclear power plant in the south of Iran if necessary. He said that Russia hopes all sides will respect commitments to keep the nuclear plant safe, and that Moscow is closely watching the situation and is ready to evacuate personnel if needed. Amid the dollar's sharp decline, yesterday's Federal Reserve interest rate meeting drew even greater attention than before. As expected by the market, the Federal Open Market Committee voted to keep interest rates unchanged. However, the decision to stand pat wasn't unanimous, with Fed Governors Stephen Moran and Christopher Waller casting dissenting votes in favor of a quarter-point cut. In a post-meeting statement, officials said that uncertainty about the economic outlook remained elevated. The Federal Open Market Committee stated, "Job gains have remained low, and the unemployment rate has shown some signs of stabilization. Inflation remains somewhat elevated. This could signal that officials could adopt a wait-and-see approach to crafting monetary policy. Although the Fed did not cut interest rates this time, the market may be more concerned about the direction of its future policy. Therefore, Chairman Jerome Powell's remarks at the press conference are perceived by some to be crucial." In his post-meeting news conference, Powell said that the U.S. economy is steadily moving into 2026. He expects that the pass-through effect on tariffs will peak and then start to come down, assuming there are no new tariff increases that are begun. He also said, if we see that, that would be something that tells us that we can loosen policy. So he seems to be hinting at a pause that may persist for some time. This may slow down the trend of the dollar. The U.S. dollar index, which is a gauge of the greenback against a basket of currencies, surged by 0.5% yesterday. So the markets aren't pricing in a rate cut until the summer, since Powell only has 2 meetings left before he leaves the Fed. Powell declined to comment on the various controversial issues currently surrounding the Federal Reserve, but regarding the Fed being absorbed into the Treasury, he did say, "We don't comment on the dollar. Really, the administration, and particularly the Treasury Department, has the job of oversight of the currency and exchange rates." And then he refused to address the grand jury subpoena that was issued to him by the DOJ regarding the renovation of the Fed building. Powell's term will end in May. But President Trump has yet to announce his successor. Speculation suggests several leading contenders: BlackRock Chief Investment Officer Rick Ryder, former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh, and current Fed Governor Christopher Waller, who supports lower interest rates. Polymarket data shows Ryder with a more than 40% chance of securing the nomination. So Wall Street still expects there to be 2 interest rate cuts in 2026 because the Fed's next leader, no matter who that person is, will be attuned to lower rates. At the press conference, Powell's advice to his successor was stay out of elected politics. He also encouraged the next Federal Reserve chair to engage with Congress and lawmakers. He said, "Our window into democratic accountability is Congress, and it is not a passive burden for us to go to Congress and talk to people. It is an affirmative, regular obligation. You earn it with the elected overseers. So it is something you need to work hard at, and I have worked hard at it." While everyone was discussing the Trump administration's apparent preference for a weak dollar to boost U.S. exports, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent delivered entirely contradictory messages. Not only did he strongly advocate for a strong dollar policy, but he also denied reports suggesting that the U.S. might intervene in foreign exchange markets. Bessent said yesterday to CNBC, "The U.S. always has a strong dollar policy, but a strong dollar policy means setting the right fundamentals. If we have sound policies, the money will flow in. We are bringing down our trade deficit, so automatically that should lead to more dollar strength over time. And when asked if the U.S. is intervening in the currency market or strengthening the yen, he responded, absolutely not. The recent sharp decline in the U.S. dollar is linked to the depreciation of the Japanese yen. The yen has seen depreciation since last October, falling earlier this month to near its lowest level since 1986. This was due to market expectations that Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi would dissolve the House of Representatives and call an early election, which she did. Although the Takaichi cabinet enjoys a high approval rating of 73%, the ruling party and its coalition held only a slim majority in the Japan Congress, and in the Senate, they were in the minority. This means that her policies would not have been implemented. Any slightly controversial policy would have risked being blocked by opposition parties in budgetary, legislative, or personnel matters. Therefore, she had to dissolve Congress proactively. And this will allow the public to decide whether to support her policies and whether they are willing to grant her a leadership position that is free from congressional obstruction. Thus, starting last week, Japan's political parties entered the substantive campaign phase. Voting will take place on February 8th. This also marks one of Japan's shortest campaign periods for a House of Representatives election since World War II. To win the election, Prime Minister Takaichi announced a suspension of the 8% consumption tax on food. This move has sparked panic in global markets. Tax cuts means less revenue for the government. Japan is the most indebted developed nation globally, with its current national debt amounting to 2.5 times its GDP. With reduced tax revenue, how can the Japanese government repay these debts? As a result, the yen weakened and the Japanese bond prices fell, as evidenced by rising government bond yields. Currently, the yield on Japan's 10-year government bonds has surged to 2.3%, while the yield on 40-year bonds has climbed even higher to 3.9%. How will the decline in yen and Japanese bond prices impact global financial markets? First, Japan is the world's largest creditor nation. Due to low domestic investment returns, Japan channels substantial capital into foreign markets. As a result, Japan holds massive investments across global markets. Japan capital is present everywhere. It is in the U.S. stock markets, European markets, and beyond. At the same time, they have the yen carry trade. Japan has maintained extremely low interest rates for decades, effectively at zero. This means borrowing yen comes at virtually no cost. Subsequently, global investors borrow yen, they convert it into US dollars or other currencies, and then they invest in high-yield projects such as US Treasury bonds. This practice is known as the yen carry trade. So the current surge in Japanese government bond yields signifies two things. Investors who previously invested in Japanese government bonds are incurring losses as bond prices decline, while the profit margin from yen carry trade is shrinking. Consequently, these investors must sell off their overseas investments in order to stem their losses. It's important to understand that Japan holds trillions of dollars in global investments. The simultaneous sell-off of such massive holdings would inevitably trigger a global stock market decline. It would push up U.S. Treasury yields, and it would fuel widespread risk aversion. This is one reason why gold prices currently are surging dramatically. A similar crisis played out in August of 2024. At that time, the yen surged abruptly, triggering concentrated unwinding of cash-out trades and causing a sharp decline in U.S. stocks. This time, the impact of the fluctuation is even more far-reaching, and the impact is far greater. It's not merely a short-term fluctuation in the yen, but a fluctuation shift in Japan's policy direction. Much like President Trump's policies, this upheaval is disrupting the established economic order. Many who have grown accustomed to the old system are now gripped by fear. They feel as if the sky is falling. This panic amplifies the short-term pain that is caused by these new policies. And that's precisely why we're witnessing such dramatic swings in the dollar and gold prices. If the policies of the Japanese Prime Minister and President Trump yield long-term positive effects, then this panic will gradually subside and investment markets will regain rationality. Sovereign currencies are inherently backed by their respective national economies, and a sound developing economy should inevitably stabilize its currency. Secretary of State Marco Rubio informed the Senate Foreign Relations Committee yesterday that officials from the United States, Denmark, and Greenland have formally initiated technical-level diplomatic negotiations to address America's security concerns in the Arctic region while respecting sovereignty. Rubio said it begins today, and it will be a regular process. We're going to try to do it in a way that isn't like a media circus every time these conversations happen, because we think that creates more flexibility on both sides to arrive at a positive outcome. Yesterday, the Danish Foreign Ministry also confirmed to Reuters that senior officials from the United States, Denmark, and Greenland had met. Before diplomatic procedures were initiated, the three parties had already eased tensions through multilateral mediation. Earlier this month, the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland agreed to create a working group that is aimed at addressing the differences with the United States. Additionally, with the assistance of NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, both sides have reached a preliminary framework agreement on the development rights for this resource-rich island known as Greenland. And regarding the future direction of negotiations, Rubio expressed optimism. He noted that while much work remains to be done, he believes that a favorable outcome will ultimately be achieved. Rubio said, "We've got a little bit of work to do, but I think we're going to wind up in a good place, and I think you'll hear the same from our colleagues in Europe very shortly." British Prime Minister Keir Starmer began his visit to China yesterday. This marks the first official visit to China by a British Prime Minister since former Prime Minister Theresa May visited China in 2018. Before departing, Starmer told cabinet ministers that in recent years, UK-China relations have fallen from a golden age into an ice age. And he stated that his government would adopt a strategic and consistent approach toward China. He said that French President Emmanuel Macron had already visited China 3 times, with German Chancellor Merz and United States President Trump set to follow suit. He therefore believes that Britain would miss a golden opportunity if it did not engage with China, and that this trip is expected to yield significant business opportunities. Of course, this visit to China has also faced strong opposition within the UK. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, said that she would not visit China at this time if she were in charge. She said, "We should be talking more to those countries who are aligned with our interests, not the country that is doing everything it can to undermine our economy." Luc de Pulfer, the executive director of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, stated that the Chinese Communist Party has little interest in investing in the UK unless it involves critical national infrastructure, and such investments are currently being restricted. He criticized Starmer by saying that he seems intent on reviving a golden age of Sino-British relations, but that approach no longer holds water. The majority in the UK Parliament and their government now rejects the Chinese Communist Party, since their former naive and simplistic attitude toward the CCP is fading. Although Starmer defends his actions verbally, the British public is well aware of the Chinese Communist Party's tactics. Multiple British media outlets revealed that In order to guard against Chinese espionage, the UK delegation used disposable phones, temporary SIM cards, temporary email accounts, and disposable laptops as work equipment. All of the members were instructed to not bring any personal devices. And to prevent the aircraft from being bugged, the government did not use its official jet for the trip. Instead, it chartered a commercial aircraft. The Times reported that the devices were issued to the Prime Minister, to accompanying officials, to policy teams, and to media personnel. The UK government said that it had implemented robust measures to ensure communication security. Previously, the Daily Telegraph reported that Chinese hackers had tapped the phones of several senior British officials between 2021 and 2024, including core advisors to former Prime Ministers Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak. The current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer's mobile phone may also have been targeted. Critics point out that the Labour Party under Keir Starmer's leadership has taken a soft stance on countering hostile Chinese activities that have posed risk to national security. Beyond electronic devices, the transportation used by Starmer during his trip has also drawn attention. Former Security Minister and Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat stated that the British government delegation not only opted for disposable phones for their China visit, they even chartered a disposable plane. Additionally, Sir Ian Duncan Smith, who faced sanctions for criticizing the Chinese Communist Party's human rights record, revealed that British officials even carried tents with them. They are prepared to erect one inside the Prime Minister's bedroom in order to shield him from potential pinhole camera surveillance while changing clothes. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.